You wake up every day, follow your routine, achieve goals, maybe you have the house, the car, the family you always dreamed of, but beneath all this construction of success, there's a whisper. A feeling that something is missing, a black hole in the center of your life that nothing seems to fill, not the new purchase, not the next level in your career, not the weekend drink. Do you identify with this emptiness? This is the pain of our time, the anguish of the modern soul. We spend our whole lives running from this feeling, desperately trying to fill this void with distractions and instant gratification. Society sells us the illusion that happiness is a product, but the uncomfortable and liberating truth is that this feeling of nothingness is not a flaw, it's your greatest superpower. The emptiness you feel is not the end, it's the beginning. Acclaimed existential psychologist Rollo May challenges us to stop running away. He invites us to understand that fulfillment is not achieved by filling the void, but rather by facing it head-on. Existential emptiness is not your enemy. It is the only portal, the only passage that will lead you to the truly authentic and meaningful life you seek. It's time to unravel the philosophy that transformed how we understand anxiety and the search for meaning. Prepare to redefine what it means to be alive. And now for the video. Why existential emptiness is your only path to fulfillment. Rollo May. But first, just check if you're already subscribed to the channel, because the next videos will be a series of content that will help you achieve unwavering health. The first thing we need to understand, my fellow viewer, is that existential emptiness, is not the same thing as the boredom of a rainy Sunday, or the heavy melancholy of depression. Rollo May, with the precision of a surgeon of the soul, teaches us that is a much more subtle phenomenon and, ironically, more fundamental to our human condition. It is not a disease to be cured with medicine, but rather an experience of being, a silent recognition that life, in itself, does not come with an instruction manual or a pre-packaged meaning. Think of it as the background noise of the universe when silence finally settles in. Common boredom is fleeting, resolved with a new series or a book. Depression is a clinical state that paralyzes the desire to act. Existential emptiness, however, is the abyss of freedom. It is the moment when we realize the futility of our superficial pursuits and feel the weight of our own responsibility in creating meaning. May suggests that is the absence of a deep passion or commitment to life, the feeling of being a passive observer of one's own existence, floating without an anchor in a sea of possibilities that seem equally unimportant. To illustrate this in a compelling way, imagine a high-powered executive who has it all. He works 14 hours a day, his bank account is robust, and his schedule is packed with appointments. Yet, as he closes the door of his luxurious apartment at night, he feels a chill down his spine, a hollow echo in his chest. This echo is existential unease. It's not a lack of things to do, but a lack of a greater reason to do them. May forces us to see that, often, the lives that are most externally fulfilled are the ones that suffer most internally from this lack of existential purpose. Therefore, when May speaks of existential emptiness, he is not offering us a complaint, but rather a courageous diagnosis. He is saying, you are at ground zero. Now that you have realized that life has no imposed meaning, what will you create in the remaining space? This uncomfortable awareness is the crucial first step towards fulfillment. It is the foundation upon which true authenticity must be built. In times past, human life was rigidly shaped by powerful narratives. People were born, lived, and died within a grand myth, be it religious, tribal, or ideological, that dictated their purpose and rules. Where to go, what to value, how to suffer, and even how to love, everything was predetermined. There was suffering, yes, but there was little existential emptiness, because meaning was delivered ready-made. The individual was an essential piece in a larger cosmic or social machine. Then came the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, and what Nietzsche famously called the death of God. The great structures crumbled. Science demystified the cosmos, democracy diluted monarchical power, and the liquid society of postmodernism left us with dizzying freedom. May observe that this freedom, though celebrated, came at a terrible price, the loss of all anchors. There was no longer a universal, ought to be, Suddenly, each of us became the solitary architect of our own universe of meaning. The problem, according to May, is that we were liberated, but we weren't taught how to build. This absence of a meta-narrative, a grand unifying story, has left us in a kind of spiritual orphanhood. Without a god or a strong ideology to tell us who we are forced to answer the question, "Who am I?" without a script. It is in this soil of radical freedom and lack of myths that existential emptiness flourishes. It manifests itself as a sense of insignificance. Because, if everything is relative and if there is no divine purpose, what is the difference between building a skyscraper or staying in bed all day? May shows us that the intensity of our emptiness is directly proportional to the vastness of our newly acquired freedom, and that the task of our generation is not to mourn the loss of myths, but to have the courage to create new ones that sustain us. Existential emptiness always goes hand in hand with existential anxiety, and this is a crucial distinction in May's theory. Neurotic anxiety is a disproportionate reaction to a specific and avoidable danger, such as fear of spiders or public speaking. Existential anxiety, on the other hand, is the vertigo of freedom. It is a natural and inevitable reaction to the perception of our own finitude, of non-existence, and of the immense responsibility of being. It is the fear we feel not of what might go wrong, but of the possibility of not becoming who we can be. Think of freedom as a vast field of possibilities. With every choice you make, millions of other possibilities die. If you choose to be a doctor, you kill the musician, the philosopher, the adventurer you could have been. It is this death of unrealized possibilities that fuels existential anguish. Emptiness settles in when we look at this field and ask ourselves, if I can be anything, why am I this? And what if, after all the effort, the choice I made still leaves me unsatisfied? May argues that we flee from anxiety by fleeing from freedom. To avoid the vertigo of having to choose, many people sink into conformity, adopting the life that society, family, or culture imposes on them. They exchange the terrible freedom of "I can" for the illusory security of "I must." They accept a prefabricated meaning and, with that, temporarily silence their anxiety. But the price is high. By stifling freedom, the individual stifles their own vitality. The existential void then returns, but now masked. Instead of being the void that calls for creation, it becomes the void of an unlived life, the mourning for possibilities that were never touched. May teaches us that the only way out is not to eliminate anxiety, which is impossible, but rather to use it as a compass. Anxiety is proof that you are alive and confronting the reality of your freedom. Once the existential void manifests itself, the first human reaction, almost instinctive, is to flee from it. We cannot bear the idea that the universe doesn't care, that we are responsible, and that the pain of nothingness is real. Thus, modern society has specialized in providing us with a pharmacy of highly effective distractions, a veritable arsenal of denial to keep the void under the rug of consciousness. The most common mechanism is rampant consumerism. With each new purchase, we promise ourselves that the next object, the latest cell phone, designer clothes, the fastest car, will finally fill that void in our hearts. It's a relentless race where satisfaction is fleeting, because the EV is not a material need, it's a spiritual need. The object becomes a fetish, a desperate attempt to materialize lost meaning. Another popular refuge, especially for adults, is overwork, workaholism. A packed schedule, absolute dedication to one's career, and an obsessive focus on goals and productivity become a shield. If I'm too busy, I don't have time to think. If I'm too important to the company, I must have a purpose. Exhaustion becomes a badge of honor, proof that life is full, when in reality it's just overcrowded with activities, not purpose. Finally, May observes superficial relationships and addictions. Addiction to substances or screens silences the void through chemical numbness or constant distraction. Relationships that serve only to fill time, or that do not require authentic vulnerability, are social crutches. They give us the illusion of connection, but avoid the real encounter, where the naked truth of our being and the being of the other is confronted. The void persists, hidden behind likes and empty interactions. May warns us, Every denial of the void is a denial of our own possibility of fulfillment. Here we arrive at Rollo May's great turning point, the idea that completely reverses our perception of suffering. Existential emptiness, that terrible feeling of meaninglessness, is not a system failure, it is the smoke alarm of your soul. It is your authentic self screaming that the life you are living is incompatible with the potential you possess. It is, therefore, a sign of health. The person who feels absolutely no emptiness is, paradoxically, the one most in danger, because they are totally anesthetized and oblivious to their own condition. Imagine you're on a plane, and the red light on the panel starts flashing. The pilot, if wise, won't simply try to break the bulb. He'll see the signal as vital information, an urgent call to inspect the engine and make a course correction. Emptiness is your red light. It arises when you're flying on autopilot, following a life map drawn by other people. It's the moment when your intuition says, "This isn't you. The route is wrong." May argues that this alarm signal has a purifying function. It forces the individual to question, why am I doing this job? Why am I with this person? Why am I living in this city? Without the void as a catalyst, we would remain indefinitely trapped in comfortable, but small, cages. It is the discomfort that precedes evolution, the necessary purgatory that expels us from the paradise of unconsciousness. Therefore, instead of fearing or medicating it, May encourages us to listen to the void. It is a messenger that brings the truth, that you are free to create a new path. The only way to transform the void into fulfillment is to recognize it as a sacred space where old lies and imposed identities die to give way to a new and stronger self. Existential emptiness is, fundamentally, a confrontation with non-existence. It is our encounter with the certainty of death, with the inevitability of loss, and with the fact that, on a cosmic level, we are small and our time is limited. Most people live in denial of this truth, building illusory structures of permanence. The idea that fame will last forever, money will guarantee security, or love will never end. May tells us that the path to the true self requires the fall of these structures. You need to allow false certainties to crumble. The void is the sound of the implosion of your social persona, of that mask you wear to be accepted, of the role you play in the world. And yes, it's terrifying. The process of stripping away the illusory self is accompanied by a deep pain, a feeling that you are losing your footing. But it is precisely at this point of vulnerability and fall that the true authentic self can emerge. As long as you cling to the crutches of external security, you will never know who you really are. You will only be the sum of others' expectations. The void forces you to go to the underground of your soul and find what is non-negotiable, what is real, what withstands all losses. It is there, in the darkness of uncertainty, that you discover your own foundation. For May, the act of confronting one's own finitude and chaos is what truly makes us human. The fulfilled individual is not the one who has overcome death or loss, but the one who has integrated them into their experience. They know that, precisely because time is short, every choice matters. Emptiness, therefore, is the force that pushes you out of the sleep of ignorance and into the wakefulness of a meaningful life. Think of life as a journey in 3 phases. The first is innocence. In childhood, we live under the umbrella of rules and structures given to us by parents, religion, or school. We are not responsible, we are protected. The child is innocent because they are not aware of their own freedom and the consequent responsibility. They live, but they don't choose to live. The second phase is the one most people experience: rebellion and conformity. In adolescence and youth, there is an initial rebellion against rules, a cry for freedom. But to avoid the existential void that this freedom generates, most quickly fall into a new set of rules: social rules, labor market rules, the rules of contemporary success. The individual exchanges one prison for another, often more subtle and self-imposed. Existential emptiness emerges as the gateway to the third and highest phase, consciousness or authenticity. It is the moment when the individual realizes that they can no longer live by other people's rules, either the old nor the new. They understand that they are solely responsible for writing their own laws. Emptiness is the blank space on the page where their true story will be written. This transition is marked by profound suffering, as it requires you to kill the innocent child and the adaptable rebel that existed within you. Rollo May shows us that the fulfilled person is the one who makes this transition. They embrace the idea that life is a constant project of creation. The void is no longer a hole, but the womb of their identity. The conscious individual is not seeking meaning outside themselves. They are actively, with each choice, generating meaning from within. It is the most courageous transition one can make, and it is the only one that leads to genuine fulfillment. So, were you already familiar with the benefits of existential emptiness? Did you already know any of these surprising facts from Rollo May? Leave your comments below. Existential emptiness is, in essence, the way reality presents itself before the individual imposes their own order upon it. Think of emptiness not as a lack, but as a raw and unlimited potential. It is the blank page, the empty canvas, the silence before the first musical note. And what is creativity if not the act of filling nothingness with the unique mark of one's being? May viewed creativity as the highest manifestation of psychological health. It is the human solution to the tragedy of emptiness. When confronted with the anxiety of freedom, the creative individual does not flee into conformity. He uses this tension as a driving force. The pressure of emptiness transforms into the need to build, to give form, to generate beauty, or meaning where before there was only formlessness. The paradox here is that inspiration is not a gift that falls from the sky, but a response to crisis. Emptiness and anxiety act as an internal search engine. They force the individual to delve deeply into their values, fears, and passions to find the voice they need to express. The work of the artist, the scientist, the authentic entrepreneur is, in May's view, the attempt to give a name, a form, and a personal meaning to the disorder of the universe. Therefore, fulfillment is not about finding refuge from the void, but rather using it as creative fuel. If you feel the void, May would say, "Great! Now, what are you going to put in it?" It's an invitation to action, to poetry, to construction, to invention. Your life's work, your true calling, is your project of filling that void with your unique signature, which makes your existence irreplaceable. If creativity is the solution, courage is the engine that allows us to implement it. Rollo May, influenced by Paul Tillich, does not define courage as the absence of fear. That would only be recklessness or denial. True existential courage is the ability to move forward despite fear, to affirm one's own existence, and to create value even in the face of emptiness and the threat of annihilation, death, loss of meaning. For May, the courage to be has many faces. It is the courage to be conscious, that is, to face the truth about oneself and the world, even if it is painful. It is the courage to be different, to step away from the herd and build a life that is authentically one's own, risking criticism and isolation. It is the courage to connect, to enter into deep and vulnerable contact with another human being, knowing that this connection exposes you to the pain of loss. Existential emptiness demands courage because it confronts us with the fact that we are solely responsible for our lives. It's much easier to be cowardly and blame fate, society, or our parents. Courage is the act of saying, "Yes, the abyss exists, but I will take the leap. I will create my meaning now." This is a constant struggle, an attitude that needs to be renewed daily. May teaches us that courage is not a personality trait, it is a verb. It is the act of committing to one's own possibility, of asserting one's being against nothingness. Fulfillment is not for the fearless, but for those who use fear, the fear of the void, as an urgent reminder that life is at stake and must be lived with passion and purpose. One of May's most powerful concepts for overcoming passive emptiness is intentionality. It's not just about having an intention or a goal, but rather the ability to form an active and meaningful bridge between the perceiving subject, us, and the perceived world, reality. It's our capacity to shape what we experience. When we are trapped in passive emptiness, we are mere receivers of stimuli. The world happens to us. We are carried along by the current of news, fashions, and expectations. Intentionality reverses this game. It is the act of projecting the self into the world, of shaping perception, of directing our consciousness towards a purpose. It is what allows us to see a forest not just as a bunch of trees, but as a resource, a refuge, or a symbol. Lack of intentionality is the root of emptiness. If you are not actively seeking, choosing, and giving purpose, life becomes a series of random and colorless events. Emptiness is the state of being without intention. The fulfilled person, on the other hand, is a being of intentionality. They not only react to the world but co-create it with their goals and values. Therefore, for Rollo May, fulfillment is not a final state, but the continuous practice of intentionality. It is the act of asking oneself, what is my purpose now? What do I choose to mean with what I am doing? By asking this question and answering it with concrete actions, you fill the void not with distractions, but with the substance of your own will. It is the power to define your own destiny. As we discussed, the existential void intensified with the fall of the great religious and social myths. But Rollo May, a profound scholar of the Greek tradition and Jungian psychology, argued that human beings have an innate need to live within a myth. Myth is not a lie, it is the symbolic narrative that gives structure, purpose, and cohesion to individual and collective life. If the great universal myths, like Eden or Paradise, no longer work for us, May's solution is not to live without myths, but rather to embrace the task of creating and living our own personal myths. Your personal myth is your story, where you came from, where you are going, who your enemies are, your fears, and what your treasures are, your non-negotiable values. It is the framework that transforms the chaos of the void into a heroic journey. To live symbolically, or mythologically, is to give the depth of an ancient tale to everyday events. Your work ceases to be merely earning money and becomes the artisan's path, or the mission of service. Your relationship ceases to be mere coexistence and becomes the meeting of two souls. The void, which was once frightening, is transformed into the necessary desert where the hero retreats to find his true calling. Fulfillment, therefore, comes from having the courage to give epic meaning to your life, even if that epic only exists in your consciousness. May encourages us to find or create the symbols, the object, the ritual, the phrase, that remind us daily of who we are and why we are here. It is in this recovery of imagination and symbolic meaning that we find the strength to resist the void. Okay, let's move on to the next part about Rollo May and the existential void. But first, I noticed you haven't liked this video yet. That's very important so YouTube can continue showing you our content, and that way we can continue helping you. So, please like this video. It's free. Existential emptiness is often experienced as profound loneliness, the feeling that no one truly sees you. Society offers us the bomb of superficial relationships, the accumulation of acquaintances, validation on social media. But May, following the tradition of Martin Buber, the I-thou dialogue, reminds us that this is not connection. It is merely the coexistence of two separate egos that use each other. The authentic encounter is the moment of deepest fulfillment in human relationships. It occurs when two people allow themselves to lower their guard, remove their social masks, and see each other in their totality, including the vulnerability, emptiness, and finitude of each. It is an act of reciprocal courage. At that moment, the other person ceases to be an object, a role, a means to an end, and becomes an I-thou, a unique and irreplaceable being. It is the encounter that temporarily dissolves the loneliness of existential emptiness. Not because the other person fills it, but because, by being fully seen and accepted by you feel validated in your existence. You realize that your pain, your life project, and your emptiness are not only yours, but are part of the shared human condition. It is an experience of communion in which individuality is affirmed, not lost. May shows us that direction is not a solitary endeavor. Our capacity to create meaning and fill our void is intrinsically linked to our capacity to love and allow encounter. Love, in this sense, is not an escape, but the highest form of courage, for it demands that you risk being hurt in the name of mutual recognition. The master key to all of May's philosophy, and the final step in transforming emptiness into fulfillment, is responsibility. Most people seek a meaning of life, as if it were a hidden object to be found, a secret code to be deciphered. They want a formula, a guru, or a sacred book to tell them what to do. They yearn for a reality where they don't have to take responsibility. May insists that the existential void is empty not by discovery, but by creation. Meaning is not found, it is assumed. This means that, every morning, you need to get up and declare yourself the author, the creator, and the judge of your own life. There are no more excuses. Your life is the sum of your choices, and the void is the result of your lack of commitment to your own freedom. Taking responsibility is the most liberating and, at the same time, the most terrifying act we can perform. It's liberating because now you know you have the power to change everything. It's terrifying because there's no one left to blame when things go wrong. It's the end of victimhood and the beginning of existential mastery. Fulfillment is not the absence of problems, but the commitment to the struggle. When you take full responsibility for your emptiness, it transforms. It ceases to be a dead weight and becomes a constant invitation to action. Fulfillment is life lived with the full awareness that you are, at every moment, literally creating yourself through your choices. There is a great illusion that haunts the search for meaning, the idea that fulfillment is a destiny, a permanent state of peace and plenitude where the void finally disappears forever. Rollo May, however, is more honest and, therefore, more profound. He warns us that the existential void doesn't go away. It is an intrinsic part of the human condition, the shadow of our freedom. The fulfilled individual is not the one who has silenced the void, but the one who has learned to dance with it. Fulfillment is a continuous process, a series of acts of courage, creativity, and intentionality performed in the presence of the void. It is like a sailor who, even knowing that the ocean is infinite and the abyss lies just below, anchors his boat each day with purpose. Therefore, the void ceases to be a threat and becomes a constant reminder. It is the pliers that cut our shackles to conformity, and the cry that prevents us from falling into complacency. Existential anxiety continues to exist, but now it is used as a driving force, the productive fear that reminds us that we have something valuable to lose, our life and potential. Fulfillment is the art of fully experiencing tension. It's accepting that life is a balance between the meaning you create and the chaos that surrounds you. With each act of creation, you momentarily fill the void, only to find it waiting for you the next day, renewed and ready to be challenged again. That is the beauty of existential struggle. We arrive at the point of synthesis, the powerful conclusion of Rollo May's philosophy. Existential emptiness is your only path to fulfillment because it is the Trojan horse that destroys inauthentic life. It is the sound that breaks the mold that society has created for you. If you don't feel the emptiness, you are probably living the life that others have planned for you. Fulfillment lies not in finding a pre-made essence, but in building your own essence in the blank space that emptiness offers you. This act of construction is done with existential tools, intentionality, defining your purpose, courage, acting despite anxiety, and responsibility, being the non-negotiable author of your story. You become what you decide to be. The void is the paradox that saves us. By facing nothingness, we discover the immensity of all that we can create. You are forced to abandon illusory security and embrace your fragility. And it is in this radical vulnerability that your deepest strength is found. May offers us not an escape, but a challenge. The final lesson is clear. Fulfillment is living a life where its meaning is your own creation, a work of art that you make of yourself, day after day, using emptiness as your canvas and courage as your paint. Don't run from emptiness, it is your greatest ally. So, now that you know the story of Rollo May's Existential Void, were you already aware of these events? Let us know in the comments if you knew about them or if you know someone who doesn't, and don't forget to check out the next videos that are appearing on your screen now. Thank you for watching until the end. Remember, your emptiness is your gateway to fullness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue receiving future content. Until the next video.